Yeah, I'm really excited to interview you because I think our paths are very similar, our trajectories. Actually, the first time that I saw your self interview, I was like, this guy's in for good. Like his DNA's got CC or CC's got his DNA written all over it. The way that you're talking about weaving fitness to realization fitness, how you used to be a personal trainer, and how you went through the whole pragmatic dharma scene and everything. But I guess before we go there, I know my voice is a little messed up because I'm sick. A lot of people in the cohort are sick this week, and Machen
Mm.
actually talked in a debrief just now about how he was gonna warn us that this week is gonna be a lot of purging, a lot of
Mm.
people getting sick, a lot of people throwing up, and yourself is a little bit sick, right? But not too bad.
Yeah, yeah, purging. I had a bit of a sore throat, but nothing blew up from that. But I've been having like GI issues, runny stool, that kind of stuff. And it's not, I don't think it's diet related. I really do see like the body is processing internally, right? Physically, the structure is changing as we're going through this intensive training together.
I think you called it on your log realization puberty.
Yeah, I've had a few bodily changes that were strange. I had cankers, like these canker sores that just kind of popped up, and I noticed persistent like bad breath for a while.
Yeah, I always look at it as a physical transformation. I even made a whole point about how like, oh, this is well, sure, there's mental faculties involved, but your whole physical body, especially when you go through like Kundalini explosions and cleansing of the chakras, it's a complete recalibration of your entire body, mind, nervous system. And it's not just one time. It's like, oh, puberty only happens once, but in this process, we learn to like die and get reborn over and over again. And I'm sure you had a lot of experiences with that already, beyond this path for so long. And what makes
Mm.
this particular phase or transformation different than your previous, I guess, unfoldments, rebirths?
For me, like it seems like the shifts are a lot more subtle. Like there's a lot less
Mm.
whatever big peak experiences. Like I think that's something I used to subtly crave for, right? Like big, obvious experiential shifts. Whether it's the visual display
Mm.
changing or big Kundalini
Mhm.
energy running through the body, like these kind of gross things. It's just a lot
Mm.
more subtle, right? So even in describing it, it probably sounds super ordinary or like, what's the big deal?
Oh, the bad breath seems like a big deal to me, bro.
That one's annoying.
Maybe you can take us back to what got you here. And I know you used to be a pretty successful fitness trainer, right? And maybe your own journey with fitness and how you became a coach. And
Mm.
now you're kind of preparing to be a mentor in CC, which is kind of going back to your dharma, right? We're here to turn our karma into dharma. And you told me at one time that you were also really obsessed with MBA, vertical jumping, explosiveness
Mm.
training. You say you could dunk at like 5'9", and just really similar trajectories to me. But one thing that was different is that actually you made a career out of it. I was just doing it for fun, but you was also doing it just for the love of the game. But then you also got to meet what you say you got to meet Kobe Bryant, or you trained. Who did you train? You trained a bunch of NBA celebrities.
I did some work with the Wizards at one point. So I got to train, yeah, some of the elite basketball players in that era, like the John Wall era. Yeah, but to go back when you're asking that, honestly, like now I kind of pin it to like when I was watching the Olympics as a kid. That's like the
Hmm.
birth of really discovering there was just something naturally, I was magnetically drawn to physical performance. So
Hmm.
for me, I grew up in Canada. I remember watching Donovan Bailey smash the 100-meter world record, 9.84, at the Atlanta Games 1996. So I would have been 10. And that did something in me. Like it lit a spark, Like as a kid, I didn't have too many interests or obsessions yet. I was just whatever, right? Just playing with everything. And that next day, I remember trying to mimic Donovan Bailey. Everything from like his running form to like
Wow.
his mouth open, sticking his tongue out, like just that image did something, right? It kind of like whatever woke me up, a part of me. And so that's probably when my interest in sports and athletics like really started. And then in high school, yeah, like actually had fair bit of success. I was a sprinter and a long jumper, and maybe just from a developmental standpoint, that's kind of where I start to build a lot of whatever healthy ego structure, a bit of self-confidence, like learning to devote to something like a discipline and practice, and that kind of stuff all started around then. And then basically university, the only passion I had was sport and training, so I decided to study kinesiology, right? So the study of human movement and exercise science. So I continued competing all through university, and it was getting injured, constantly training hard and then breaking the body, getting injured. That really got me interested in how to train smarter or look for alternative ways to develop the body.
Exert.
So that's
that's really interesting, because you used the word devotion. Yeah, and that's something we could talk about a little bit later. But it's like you're devoting yourself to an ideal almost, and that ideal was very similar to my own ideal. Because like I used to tell people I started lifting because I saw Animal Planet cheetah sprinting top speed. My favorite superhero was the Flash. There's something about speed, very particularly speed. And for you, it's Donovan Bailey. For me, it was I think it was Michael Johnson.
Yeah.
So Michael Johnson, or around the time Ben Johnson too. I never saw him sprint in real life, in real time, because he was a little bit in the previous generations. But I saw just video playbacks of Ben Johnson sprinting, but he was on steroids. But it was just a beast. It was just a pure expression of athleticism. But then there's like a certain sense of like beauty in there, the brutality of beauty, as we talked about, and very poetic. Just like the human body can express itself like that, and there's no bullshit. It's like 100 meters, you either win or you don't. You can win by 0.0001%, but there's still a difference between winner and loser. Is 100% measurable. And that really stuck out to me as something that I want to strive for, is speed and explosiveness.
Yeah. My first tattoo is actually the Olympic motto. It's the Latin word Citius Altius Fortius, which means faster, higher, stronger. And so, at an early age, like I was also very much just obsessed with pushing, the boundaries of human performance, and
Right.
I guess in a way it's like full circle, right? Like just the journey into mind training, like all that really, it's the same drive, that's been kind of pulling me on this journey.
It's this sense of transcendence, exertion and transcendence, like always taking things to the next level. The speed was just a catalyst, because speed was such an interesting, fascinating expression. But same with like jumping higher, lifting more weight, even like looking bigger, or some kind of using your body as a guinea pig. And when you get into spirituality, I guess you can say jhanas, different deeper levels of absorptions and things like that. So, but then the cause of that is like you have this like mentality to always transcend, but then you talk about injuries. How did that change your outlook, your view on exertion?
Yeah, the injury path, I think that's when I started to question convention, because I was doing all like supposed right stuff, and it wasn't working, right? I kept breaking down. So that's when I really started this like more contrarian way of like looking at the world. It's like, oh, okay, like these coaches are telling me to train in this way, but something's not working. So beginning to do my own investigation, I think that's when I started to question popular beliefs. And, so in a way, it's like that's the beginning of like that spiritual identity, getting interested in alternative healing, alternative methods of training, and a lot of self-experimentation. I think that's where I started to just become a human guinea pig, like testing a lot of things from nutrition to whatever, different modalities. And in a lot of ways, like even how the spiritual journey unfolded, it's very much that self-experimenter, contrarian energy that just kept seeking, kept searching, kept looking for, whatever better.
The most efficient, the fastest way to enlightenment, the most efficient way to get stronger at the
Kind of.
bench, a little bit.
Yeah, kind of. It's like developing that, like we talk about renunciatory mind, like the moment you detect something's no longer working, like being comfortable with dropping it, so like even though you've been sticking to a certain style,
Self-invalidation.
So you reach a point, you're like, you know what, like you have to now let this go. It's time to switch vehicle or do something different. And maybe in a way that was like a muscle that was being trained, having that capacity.
from the way you're speaking, it seems like there's always a kind of a signal that you're following. Oh, you also mentioned the word convention. I was just wondering, back then when you're trying to get stronger and trying to like jump higher, what was considered like the mainstream teachings? Because from the way that I went through my journey, whatever was considered the mainstream convention wasn't the way to get the strongest, the fastest, the weirdest. Because
Mm,
I looked up West Side Barbell, Louis Seaman.
mm,
I was like, okay,
mhm,
how do you really get strong? But then all the bodybuilding magazines um, that was like considered mainstream or the Men's Health, they were giving you like really gimmicky like programs. It was like, oh, just about six pack abs and stuff like that. But then I had to like look into like the deeper corner of the internet and I found out like West Side Barbell or like I don't know Joe DeFranco. I don't know if you know him. Eric Christie, Kelly Baggy, guys like that. And yeah, what did you use to get stronger and to really break those plateaus?
realizing that when you're exercise training, like in the conventional way, like strength training, powerlifting, only the strong muscles keep getting stronger while the weak stay
Mm,
weak. So it actually
mm,
enhances or exacerbates your imbalance. So the moment
mm,
that piece of information got to me, it made a lot of sense. It's like, oh, okay, I need to investigate where my weak links are. So a lot of
mm,
actually how to train different was to go and investigate what is it that's not being used, right? So just,
mm,
oftentimes they're like small muscles or the stability muscles in the body that aren't sexy. You don't never heard of them. Muscles in the spine that just like, really are crucial for your core strength. But all you think about are the big gross muscles, right? The big pushers and pullers. So a lot of the alternative training was actually just getting very specific with training everything, including these muscles that you've never thought about, right? So that's what I think enabled my body to unlock, be able to reach a different level before the system breaks. Because if you keep doing
okay.
the same thing, then yeah, the strong will continue to magnify, get stronger, while the weak remain weak because they're not actually participating, right, with the rest of the body.
It kind of reminds me of what we do in the boot camp, right? Just come as you are, and you can't hide, right? You have to reclaim every aspect of yourself, even the parts of you that you don't like, you don't want to see, you don't want other people to
Exactly,
see.
right? The parts that have
Mm,
been ignored, overlooked, or you
mm,
just haven't been aware of, conscious of.
mm. And that could look different in the different phases of your training. Because for me, it was speed, right? It was like, okay, I was trying to get stronger, but then I wasn't focusing on like the speed lift, for example. Or if I was doing too much speed lift, I wasn't focusing on the max effort lift because you need like speed times like strength to produce power. So for most people, they don't really think about benching 3 reps as fast as you can for like 3 seconds. So that's a mislink
Mm.
if that you didn't train the kind of like the reactive or the explosive part of the lift. But for some people, it's max effort strength, and for some people, it's if you want to get stronger on the bench press, they wouldn't think to train, say like the maybe the front deltoids or maybe even tricep. Triceps is a little bit more obvious, but I remember there was a lot of emphasis on the West Side Barbell about, hey, your triceps really got to get strong if you want to increase your bench, not just your chest. That's the most obvious thing. People just keep training their chest, keep training their chest, their chest getting bigger. But if their goal is to increase your bench press, there's hidden muscles, including your trap. How you like, have to create the stability to arch your back. Even that cannot be avoided, and that goes all the way down to like nervous system efficiency, um, or even your diet and things like that.
Yeah, on that note, like I remember doing a lot of isometrics actually, like exercises
Mm,
that involve no movement, and how
okay.
crucial it was to target specific muscles to strengthen so that they can be part of your explosive lifts, right? So even though
Right, right.
this one isometric looks nothing like the intended goal, but it's
Mm,
the transfer. The key is that what it's doing is it's bringing online a part, so then you can actually integrate it better, with the rest of the system. So, yeah, if you want to run faster, sometimes it's actually about not moving, right? Like doing a static
mm,
hold
mm.
might actually be the link to getting you to run faster, which
Interesting.
is counterintuitive.
I know we've been talking about in the boot camp this like transference between realization fitness and fitness, and how I was talking about physically getting stronger, probably being one of the strongest phases of my life. But I wasn't working out. I am not working out more, right? Sometimes even less. But for some reason, I'm just getting stronger. And then I was just kind of half jokingly say it's all the empowerments that I've been getting from the mentors and the Mei Chen in the boot camp. And Mei Chen actually said, Yeah, that totally makes sense because you think that you have to physically do something that mimics the whatever it is that you're trying to become better at, but then it's everything else in your life
Mm. Yeah.
that not you wouldn't even associate it with physical fitness conditionings, which is like meditation or like even just exhausting the part of your karma that's been tangled so that it frees up more energy. Tell me a little bit more about like how your career in fitness training, coaching, how that impacted your sense of self. I remember chatting with you one time about how when you started to become pretty good at the like you're pretty well known in your field, right? And then that was around the time when you were also starting to maybe question like this, I guess, inquiry into the sense of identity. Being successful at this field,
Yeah.
and did you have to
I,
give it up? How did that whole process go?
I had pretty
Mm,
quick success, like at a young age, able to build up
mm,
professional life fairly quickly, early, and yeah, like have a bit of a reputation in the field. And it was actually realizing that I wasn't any happier. Like even with all the stuff that I thought I
mm,
was chasing, seeking for, right? Like a bit of status, having some financial stability, and genuinely enjoying the work too. It wasn't like I didn't enjoy the craft, but there was just some part of me that was increasingly
mm,
feeling disconnected and like becoming suspicious, right? It's like, oh, all this striving and working
mm.
hard and achievement isn't delivering the goods. Like there's something else that you're looking for. Um, I think that was one major
Did you know what it
trajectory.
was that you were looking for?
I don't even know, honestly. Like I didn't
Did
even
you
have a
know what you
language
were
for
looking
this
for? Yeah.
because I didn't even admit to myself that I was in pain, right? Like because on the outside it looked like
Mm,
everything was fine, everything conventionally is working, right? So I couldn't even communicate to people, or even myself, that I wasn't fulfilled or happy or satisfied, right? There was a lot of dissatisfactoriness. Um, yeah, so I think that really is what pushed me to ultimately making the decision to leave. At first I thought it was a sabbatical. I told myself, oh, I'll give myself a few months to just explore something new. Maybe I need a new refresh, something.
mm,
Um, and it was kind of a big shock to, everyone around me. But as I gave myself that space, that's when my curiosity really started to blossom. Um, First getting drawn into psychedelics, I was just like so fascinated because I hadn't done very many drugs up until then, but I was starting to read about how psychedelics can have a therapeutic, purpose as well as just sort of, bringing insight. It was around that time I started meditating as well. So both uh, the psychedelic interest and then the practice, right? I think that's when formal practice began. And for me, it was using just basic apps. I think Headspace was my gateway drug. Just following an
yeah,
app
that
and just.
Headspace is still one of my favorite meditation apps. I don't use it
Hmm.
anymore, but it's the only
Yeah,
app that actually guided meditation about no self. So you were like you had success in your field that didn't fulfill you, but what about when you mentioned in the beginning when you were going after that idea of like just exertion and transcendence? Like, were you any happier, getting stronger? Because obviously you also accomplished a lot, not just in your professional field as a trainer, but then personally. Can you maybe talk about some of your personal accomplishment in terms of like powerlifting meets or like you say you did track in high school? Did getting faster, stronger, and lifting more weights was that more fulfilling? Or was that in the same ballpark as having a better career? Was it a little different? Or did it
yeah, I think that
overlap?
was all the same. Like,
Mm,
yeah, I had some success in track. You know, yeah, they feel good in the moment. Like they bring you, a sense of whatever triumph, and yeah, there's something very enjoyable about that feeling, like winning, right, and getting rewarded for all the hard work. But I think it's like the fact that you always just go back to whatever. There's always this dissatisfactoriness you return to, no matter how much you accumulate, right? You accumulate in terms of success, yeah, whether it's material or like even experiential. Like as you gather more experience, like it's.
mm,
I think that's when I was interested in like a lot of Buddhist philosophy. Just talking about suffering, and realizing, yeah, like no matter what you try to do within samsara, right? It's like there's just this deep dissatisfactoriness, which usually
Yeah.
begins your quest, right? To search for something,
Mm.
play a different game.
Would you say that quest to become stronger and faster and even having a more successful career, would you say that drive is the same as the drive to, say, alleviate the satisfactoriness that came from having success in these fields?
Is that drive the same?
Yeah. If it's different, how do you think it's different? Because I did hear you mention something that's really interesting in terms of like you were kind of, even though you were kind of doing it for powerlifting meets or become a better coach, there was something that you mentioned which I thought was pretty rare. It's like you wanted to exert just for the sake of exertion. You wanted to get stronger just for the sake of getting stronger and for nothing else.
Yeah. I think if I'm honest, it always tends to begin that way. Like the initial interest is always because there's something about the process and like wanting to dunk for the first time, right? Just like I didn't care, it wasn't to show off, it wasn't to,
Mm.
impress or whatever. It's like, it's just to see, can I do this? So that's always been
Mhm.
consistent, right? Whenever some new endeavor
Yeah.
begins, it's from that place of like, I just simply want to do it for its own sake. There's no clear like objective. Maybe they come afterwards. They're like, oh, okay, like a reason comes and I'm trying
Mm.
to communicate. That's why I'm doing it. It's for
Mm.
these reasons. But the true, I think, maybe like the pure intention often starts with this kind of, you want to call it innocent or childlike, right? It's just like, I just want to do it. I don't have a reason. I just want to try it.
Mm. Yeah, because I don't think you were thinking about your fitness training career when you saw Donovan Bailey sprinting that fast.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. That's why I think that memory
Interesting.
sticks
Mm.
out, because that opened the door, and you just step into this, whatever, this trajectory, not even conceiving that there's a path there, right? You just do it.
Mm. But did that sense of wonder ever go away as you accumulate more success,
It got
or
distracted. It's almost like I got
it got
distracted with
distracted?
the other stuff. Like, like getting,
Yeah.
initially it was like, yeah, I was interested in just learning the fundamentals of exercise training and how to help other people. And then eventually it became, okay, how do I make more money? How do I expand this business? How
Mm.
do I get to the next whatever, right? And so those kind of
Yeah.
classically like egoic goals become more the dominant driving force. And then, yeah,
Mm.
in a real
Yeah.
sense, I lost touch, right, of the original spark, or that,
Mm.
I don't know what you want to call that, passion, or yeah, curiosity. I was going to say, like, you actually played a big role in me reconnecting with exercise again and beginning to fall in love with it. Because
Mm.
when I left the industry and even going down this spiritual path, I had contemplated like leaving it for good, like never really training, or even not mentioning to people. I almost got into this tendency of like, oh, I just deleted that part of my life. I don't even bring it up. It's like a past, story. Yeah, like coming into CC, talking about exercise with you actually got me interested in reconnecting and reclaiming that part of me, right? So now, like, I've enjoyed coming back into exercise with this childlike interest, and I don't have to disown all my experiences and all my past, but there's a freshness to it, right? There's this, so I can relate to it in like a more playful, friendly way. It doesn't have that baggage that at one point it felt like it was just too much baggage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you change your relationship towards it in a sense, and reclaiming that part of you. Talk about that period a little bit more when you say you quit your job and then you start digging. Like, how did you know where to look? Because you seem to be like someone who, like I said earlier, there's some kind of a signal you were following. You just knew, okay, this is the right thing to do. Okay, if this is not the right thing to do anymore, in terms of like, oh, it's not working anymore, you self-invalidate. But then there's always a trajectory that you were on, and I don't think everyone can say that they have this like, I guess this intuition to know like where to look. How do you get your information? Like not just with fitness, but now like you're talking about the phase where you took us some time off and you're just exploring different psychedelics and different contemplative methods. How did you follow the signal? Because like a lot of people, they're like always ask me, what is the most like efficient method for this or that? But somehow there's a there's a guide within you that just kind of knew.
I think initially there wasn't a sense of, oh, I have this capacity to follow the signal, right? It was just like, it felt like just
Mm.
trying random stuff. It did feel like that. It was like, oh, I have all this time and space now. I'm going to pick up these books. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
I'm going to do this workshop. And then even the psychedelic thing. It's like, oh, I suddenly started meeting people that had access to psychedelics. So I'm going to go and take that opportunity. Like these opportunities were showing up, and I was just saying yes to them. So it was more like that. It was like things would pop up,
Mm.
and just by virtue of them popping up, that was like me, okay, I'm going to walk through that door, right? Without trying to overthink or
Mm.
whatever, question it. And usually something on the other side, like it was a good experience. Like that's what encouraged me, I think, to trust that, right? So it wasn't necessarily trusting myself or my intuition. It was like trusting life. Like the way life is presenting is working. You know, I didn't even have like a metaphysical explanation for it. I wasn't framing it like the universe is guiding me. There's a guiding hand. I didn't even have that kind of view. It was, yeah. I think it was seeing that things are not random, but I can't tell you why things are not happening randomly, and just going with it. You know.
Mm. You know, that sounds exactly like what following the silent signal means. You can't really articulate it, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So, like, what
because
kind of
that.
methods did you experimented with?
Yeah, the Headspace app. From there, it was Sam Harris. I think reading his book, Waking Up, listening to a bunch of podcasts, and then Vipassana was probably the first formal lineage that I dabbled in. You know, I did a 10-day Vipassana retreat. And so I think maybe that was like the moment I
Mm.
decided this is more than just a hobby. Like I want to really start to dig into this meditation stuff. I got into Shinzen
Mm.
Young pretty soon after that, because Shinzen was somebody that communicated in a very pragmatic, kind of scientific, engineering type way. And for at the time, that was I had an appetite for that, right? It was like, oh,
View.
okay, I can roll with this guy. He's talking about mystical stuff, enlightenment, and he has this kind of whatever science way
Science.
of communicating.
Same. Yeah. Yeah. Vipassana for me too was like the first time I realized my mind could actually produce states of consciousness sober, like states of consciousness as powerful as psychedelic trips, while just by meditating. That was when I got really serious. But at that time, I think I was still chasing after states in a sense. Didn't know the difference between, let's say, the insight or an experience versus realization. And
Mm.
then, like you, I think I went down the rabbit hole of like, okay, if this guy talks about science, then there must be some truth to it. At that time, I guess you could say I was still a physicalist or a materialist, which got me into Daniel Ingram, and you also found him. So, like,
Yeah.
did you realize there was a paradigm in there that you maybe it's not like it's a wrong view, but it's a partial paradigm, and there was some bias towards like science.
So it's interesting. Daniel Ingram, when I first heard of him in a podcast interview, when I heard him speak, my body actually started to shake like uncontrollably. So I was having Kundalini stuff. It didn't start with Daniel Ingram, but
Hmm.
that week or that month, I had just started having these phenomena, right? These things I never
Hmm.
experienced, like the hand starting
Hmm.
to vibrate and shake, and then the energy, running through the whole body. Um, but when I listened to Daniel Ingram, it intensified. So now I had like a physical marker of like the signal. It's almost like I would pick up on something
Hmm.
someone says,
Okay.
or a book, and this energy seems to intensify, and then I'm having this feedback. I think that's when I started to let go of some of the whatever the physicalist views and just even scientific paradigm, because there's just this mystery now. It's like, holy crap, like I don't know what's going on here, and it's getting more and more mysterious, right? And maybe that's what, yeah, began the whatever, like consciously letting go of that physicalist view.
And was that hard for you?
It was super hard,
Was
honestly.
there a
I didn't,
sense of it was super hard.
yeah, like I didn't know who to talk to. I think that was the hardest part. Like where do I ground these experiences? There are very few people in my life that I
Right.
could describe these things without sounding like a crazy person, and really, yeah, seriously, even questioning, like, am I getting am I getting sick? Like, do I need to go see a doctor? You know, is there actual disease going on here? And it was a pretty lonely time. But again, life also just seemed to bring the new conditions that would support that, right? Like discovering, I think it was around the time I went back to school to be trained as a psychotherapist. And then I found a psychotherapy program that was pretty esoteric, you know, like in the, compared to what was mainstream. Like they were interested in dream analysis, Jungian thought, even, you know, mystical traditions. So it was like, oh, I found a group of people that I can share my weird experiences with, you know, and that was actually really, really supportive at the time.
How far along the book did you get into Danny Ingram's group? Did you like because it's almost like a manual, right? Like, did you like kind of go through some of the stages, or even maybe True Adult Side? I think you say you dabble with that. Because I know by this point you kind of
Yeah.
already self-invalidated that, or did you continue to do both? Because I know you can drop the scientific view while still practice, I say, quote unquote, scientifically in terms of like being measured, which genre you're describing maneuvers and things like that. Like, what was your frame of reference back then when you started to find that new group of people that could talk about things like outside of the materialistic paradigm? What was your practice like?
Yeah, I followed it for a while, like the stages of insight. Yeah, trying to
Yeah.
map my experience with the progress. And I don't, I might have actually read the whole book. And what was frustrating me at the time was I wasn't getting cessations. I think that was like a thing I was like reifying and making
Mm.
into a thing and like a milestone.
Oh,
And I
okay.
was like, so I was getting really
Yeah.
frustrated. Like I'm putting all this practice in, and like I haven't had a cessation yet. Like it just seemed like a really important thing to, you know, to discover. Um, and then I went back to using psychedelics, you know, to see if that can help. You know, I was like trying mushrooms at the time, like doing mushrooms with the intention of
Did
experiencing
you get
a
get a cessation?
cessation.
Oh, that's crazy, bro.
So I actually did.
Yeah.
So the mushrooms actually did.
You actually got a cessation doing, you
Yeah,
said through
in that altered
mushrooms.
state.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like a very, very clean textbook cessation. Just yeah, it was exactly what I was reading, like the way I was reading people's descriptions about it, and but something in me also was like, oh, I didn't want to cheat. You know, it seemed like that was like the cheating way to do it. You know,
Mm.
I still wanted to through practice, through meditation alone. Yeah, I can't remember how what made me kind of lose interest in Ingram's work, because I started to follow other teachers. You know, I went into like even a Tibetan lineage for a bit. It's probably that, you know, that frustration of like, okay, it's working to a certain point, it's not working anymore. Now it's time to switch vehicles and try
Hmm.
something different.
So did you ever get cessations without psychedelics during
Yeah,
around that
yeah.
phase?
Not
Uh,
till maybe much later, actually, when I stopped caring about it. It was like not even, I actually kind of lost,
mm, mm,
it no longer became a thing that I was grasping, and they were happening. You know, I might have not even registered that they were cessations, but it's like, oh, okay, yeah, so that's also just kind of happens,
right.
but I wasn't, yeah, it's interesting how that works. Like, it wasn't like I was gunning for it, and they would happen when they do, and, you know, sometimes
Mm.
they don't, and it's fine.
I got my first cessation without knowing what it was, but then after I started reading about it on like Reddit and eventually discovering Danny Ingram, I made a huge thing out of it. In fact, I would just ask people, you know, have you ever had a cessation in your practice? And I didn't care about anything else. If you didn't have a cessation, for me, that wasn't a true awakening. But that's the kind of feeling like you get from reading Dan Ingram's book, right? I can see the pros and cons in
Hmm.
that. How like cessation is kind of an important milestone, but at the same time, I think people grasp onto it, and I verify it for the wrong reasons. It's not like cessation is a necessity, but neither is it not important, right? So, what is it about cessation? Do you think that what did you get out of all these different cessation experiences? Like, why do people make a thing out of it? Or what was
I
your
don't know.
initial insight in terms of
It's
like,
probably,
okay, well, this is what a cessation is about? Like,
yeah, it's probably not entirely uncorrelated to like having a certain degree of mental fitness, right? Like certain capacity to get into absorption,
mm,
concentration states, and having that
yeah,
sustainability. Like I think it does correlate well, right? If you can train those skills, then your chances of getting into cessation probably goes up. From like an insight standpoint, it's just seeing how phenomena starts to be constructed. Like after you go into like a blip in experience, when experience reassembles and reconfigures, you begin to just see. You get to see how it's constructed, the sequencing and the way and maybe that's the value. You know, it's not the cessation itself, but it's like
Yep.
in those moments, you get to see otherwise what is hidden from you, right? You get to kind of see the magic trick, you know, in slow motion or something.
Mm. Yeah, how not just your sense of self, but your entire reality is constructed from the ground up. Yeah, I think that's
Hmm.
the insight, really. Mm. So, what kind of Tibetan stuff did you get yourself into? And this is also coinciding with the psychotherapy stuff, right? Like the two were kind of like going on in parallel.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was a Michael Taft interview. He talked to Daniel Brown, Daniel P. Brown. He's passed now, but at the
Mm.
time he was
Yeah,
doing
right.
retreats, and
I like him.
he had a few books, and he's a clinical psychologist. So someone that, yeah, when he was talking about it, he was very, very clear. Like this is about awakening. It's like you do these practices for no other
Mm.
reason. It's not for just sort of mindfulness, like headspace, you know, just to improve productivity, but like you do this to wake up. And people have mapped this out. Like it's all laid out already, and you have to follow the instructions. And so that was around COVID time. So everything was
Mm.
online, and so I had all this time. I had all this free time. So for a year or 2 years, I did a bunch of retreats with him, and yeah,
Oh, you
that was
did. You
interesting
actually
too
did
because I
retreats with
had
Dan Brown
maybe
while
my
he's
first
still alive.
non-dual glimpse.
Oh, okay. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, it was like
So
four of them,
how is that
four
different
different
from Daniel
retreats,
Ingram stuff?
and one of them
Hmm.
more.
Yeah, because Daniel Ingram does talk
So
about
he comes
his
from
method that way too. This is about awakening. Go ahead.
yeah, the pointing out instruction is what differs. I think the style in which he instructed,
Mm, okay.
it was like just follow the pointing out instruction, and it's like laid out kind of step by step, and you follow. So there's a lot more instruction. You know, it's like the instructions unfolding with you as you're going through the training, versus Ingram was like, here are some basic things, and then you're off on your own, right? You're on your own, and you're just kind of working and navigating your own experience. Um, that would be the main difference, I think, is yeah, having someone teach you in a systematic way, like based on a lineage, based on a specific style of
Okay.
teaching,
Okay.
and also seeing shifts, right? Seeing actual fruits of the training.
Mm,
That got me very, very curious.
interesting. That's a really interesting distinction because now we're at CC, we keep emphasizing the importance of, having a sangha, having a teacher, and really delving deeper into the pedagogy of a teaching, a lineage, not just like, okay, you watch this one video, or you read this book out of context, right? Can you maybe just give a really quick point out instruction, like what you learned from Dan Brown, like a couple ones? Like what would that be like? Like he would just guide you through a specific maneuver, and then you were just, if you follow through, you have a non-dual glimpse. Like what's that like? Because I never
Yeah,
had received teachings like that. Like when I was trying to practice Dzogchen or something like that, I didn't have a teacher.
to kind of set up the beginning of the warm up, like the initial part of the meditation. There'll be an example of like, okay, bring to like conjure up the sense of self, like actively bring forth
Mm,
your usual day-to-day sense of yourself, your identity, and
mm,
whatever that is for you, whether it's your physical awareness of your body or a mental image of yourself, and now scan the
mm,
experience to see if there's anything substantial about that, right? So then it's like actively looking at
mm.
whatever that is, that your sense of self, can you find anything in there that's
Right.
solid, that's substantial, that remains? And so you do the looking and you discover that it's unfindable. Like whatever it is that you're
Mm,
looking for is unfindable. So then the pointer there is the
mm,
unfindability. From that, you now
mm,
establish
mm,
like the view of um, emptiness, right? So the sense of self
Mm.
appears, but is like a cloud, right? It vividly
Mm.
appearing, yet nothing can be pinned down. And then, so you're not just taking on these beliefs, but you're directly looking to check with your experience if it is the case. And so it's kind of like that. You're kind of systematically following and checking your experience to see if it maps on to what is being pointed.
Mm. I bet that if you didn't follow the Ingram stuff or maybe do the concentration work, you wouldn't be able to get it that quickly. Because even the point on instruction probably requires some kind of a fitness, like some kind of a this interplay between relaxation and concentration,
I think so.
right? Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
It
Dan
does
Brown,
feel like
what
those
happened?
everything that was dabbled in,
Right.
everything that was dabbled in was like a preliminary training for the next thing. Like it did feel like it had a progression like that.
Yeah. Mm. So around that time, your fitness level was able to just, with the snap of a finger, say, just get into a non-dual state. Like, but then you kind of have to work on, I guess, holding the view. Or like, what is your moment-to-moment experience like back then? I mean, what was your practice like from that point forward? Because now you got the teaching, or at least from Dan Brown, like what he had to offer.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
you keep going.
There was an emphasis to continuously hold the view with your eyes open and doing the
Mm.
daily mundane
Mm.
things. So it'd be in the car, and actually that was probably
Right.
where the first, like, it felt really jarring because I was driving, and then I really did feel like for the first time I'm not the
Mm.
one driving. It was freaky, right? The first time, like,
Mm.
things are just happening,
Hmm.
cars driving.
Freaky.
I can see the landscape moving, but there's no one doing this. Like, it was really scary. There was a lot of fear that arose because it was this habitual pattern, right, of expecting. It was, yeah, basically like you're experiencing driving for the first time in a new way, and it was very, very scary.
Mm.
So things like that took time to calibrate or to find a new baseline.
Was there a sense of verifying the non-dual state or verifying non-doership during that phase, or did you
Yeah,
know that maybe that you were
yeah,
holding on to the view? But
definitely. I think that was the main thing, was reifying non-doership. It was like, oh, okay, if I can
yeah.
keep feeling the sense of there's no doer here and things are just happening, that means I'm holding the view, right? So just using that as a
Mm.
marker or something, probably for a few years. It's probably like 3 years of like just keep
For you.
referencing that quality of experience, no doer,
Mm.
automaticity, spontaneity.
Hmm. So anytime you have a sense of doer that pops up, you just somehow think you're either regressing or you're not doing the practice right, or like, oh, I'm now not as enlightened
Yeah,
as I could be. Mm.
exactly. Yeah.
And I'm guessing that was before you got into the insights of dependent origination. Because once you have the insight into dependent
Mm.
origination, you see clearly that non-doership is actually can't stand on their own 2 feet. Non-doership is a phenomenon that occurs due to certain sets of causal conditionings. When those sets of causal conditioning changes, maybe you feel like there is a doer, but neither is really the ultimate, right? That we talk about the view beyond extremes, which is beyond the extreme of like doer and non-doer, and then going beyond that. And I guess maybe the rest of your journey, you can, I guess, attest to that going beyond extremes, and which is what we do in CC continuously.
Yeah, there was a lot of suffering, honestly, right? Like needing experience to look a certain way to keep up this belief that, oh, I have some sort of
Hmm.
attainment or awakening, right? So like that's
Right,
actually,
right, right. Yeah.
there was a lot of pain that came
Mm.
from that. So just that alone, like being free to allow however
Hmm.
reality to appear is so much more enjoyable, right? It's so much easier when you don't have to force it through a very tight, lens.
Even if that lens is infinite, it's still kind of like a lens. How did you come to this insight then? You actually don't even have to force a view because, like, what was your journey from that point on to, I guess, discovering CC? Just making a decision to commit to your first boot camp. It was like cohort 6.
So I discovered CC through the podcast, like when you guys would chat,
Hmm.
on YouTube, talk about the training. At that time, I thought I was done. I was like, oh, I'm done with this seeking. I've seen what there
Mm.
is needs to be
Hmm.
seen. Like I had those beliefs, and lost some of that curiosity and even addiction to like YouTube dharma, right? I wasn't really interested in watching any more content. But then you guys popped up, and the way you were talking and kind of like stuff that you were inferring, I was very curious. So that's where it's like that Donovan Bailey thing, right? It's like, I think it's to do with transmission, because I wasn't really familiar with what transmission was, the atemporality of the transmission, how the causes and conditions that are playing forwards in time, backwards in time. You guys didn't go into detail, but just you talking about it was like intriguing enough. So that was it for me. It was like, I'm going to do this because there's stuff here that I don't know. It's like the psychedelics, right? It's like, I want to try this because I've never tried it before. I don't even have an objective. I'm not trying to get anatta. I didn't actually have like concrete goals beyond just, these guys are interesting to me. You know, for some reason, there's a freshness here that's not like what the other non-dual speakers were talking about. So that was enough. That was enough to sign up for Bootcamp 6 and realize there's more. Like, instead of the conclusion that you're done, that there's nothing more to do, you know? So in a way, it was almost like a part of me wanted to know that there's more, right? Like I could sense that there's more to do or more to investigate and learn.
But there's less clinging to like a specific goal or like anatta or not, enlightenment or not. It was just more aligned with the curiosity you had as a kid.
And the fact that you guys mentioned things like fitness, it's like, oh, how is this even tied to like physical exertion? It's like, wow, I can actually begin to bring back these other parts of my journey, and it's compatible. You know, they're not separate. They're not in these different boxes that I've put them in.
Boxes. We don't want to be just boxed into being perceived as a spiritual community or even a meditation group. There were four things that we're trying to like emphasize on what CC really is about. And number one, of course, is, you know, yogic capacities, meditation, right? And then the second one is actually fitness, exertion, physical fitness. And the third one is studying, not just yogic philosophy anymore, but just, you know, learning, becoming smarter. And then the fourth one is relational skills, relationships, relational gains, relational fitness. How did you feel when you first joined the boot camp, when you first heard Machen speak? What was your impression? Was there doubts? And were you able to like follow the instructions and just receive the transmission? Like, what is that process like? Because I know like transmission practice is, in a sense, is a very different ballpark than just say Vipassana, but it's like a different thing, right?
I think for me, the first contact with Machen, the transmission, it did feel like taking psychedelics. Yeah, I'm not trying to exaggerate. It was like the first Disney transmission, like the first time everybody gathered. I felt like I was microdosing on LSD, and this was before any seeming like training is happening, right? Before I've built up any sort of fitness. So there was already an intrigue there of what's going on here with this way of meditating or sitting. And then, yeah, I would say Bootcamp 6, for the majority of that bootcamp, my first bootcamp, my interest was the yogic training. It really wasn't until much later in the bootcamp that I realized that you mentioned the relational side, the relational fitness you discover
off the cushion stuff, everything else,
like the main training, because you still have to contend with that. Yeah. Life still happens. You know, I still have my wife and kids and people in life to contend with, and no matter how many jhanas and cessations that are accumulated, it's like you still having to contend with life. I guess the real marker of whether this training is actually progressing, right? Like seeing the changes happening there is probably more reliable than the quality of the sits.
Yeah, I think you're one of the most gifted yogic practitioners that I've ever come across. Because you used to like just the first moments you started talking about your sits in cohort 6, I was like, this guy is really good at this meditation thing. And then you used to write long blog posts on the Discord about your sits, and I was like, oh, that's pretty impressive. He's able to do these kind of maneuvers and routings with the mind and have all these crazy experiences. But then you have to like almost self-invalidate that as well, because you're making a distinction between on the cushion training, which everybody probably did, you know, especially if you're really good at it, you know, on the cushion thing, and off the cushion training. It's almost like that duality for a lot of people is very hard to see through. They would just like escape life or try not to look at whatever they need to look at life and just kind of escape on the cushion. Was there a process of seeing through how you're maybe redefining your sits because, like, you are obviously very good at it, and then coming to the realization that the training is the invisible monastery, right? Like on and off the cushion is the boot camp is on and off the cushion.
What ends up happening is you realize it's about how honest you can get with yourself. Like at the end, that's like one of the core discoveries is that this whole path, in a way, is looking at honesty as like a fitness. So even with the yogic stuff, right? The more yogic capacity you have, the less you can lie to yourself. And so now you're presented with patterns, right? You continue repeating these patterns, but you're no longer confused that they're happening. You know, you're presented with this real choice of like, do you now course correct, like choose a different way or not? And if you don't, you can just immediately sense and feel you're being dishonest. You know, you're lying to yourself, or you're right. We talk about virtue. Like to me, it's like I think that's what starts to change, and where that shows up most is in relationships, right? With my loved ones, and you begin to see all your bullshit, the way these patterns have perpetuated. You can no longer ignore them, and so it's now just like basically the willingness to resolve or undo the patterns that have been accumulated.
I remember when we were talking about the earth element, and then we were talking about like how we stay in contact with the earth element. Like, how do you actually contact? And then your answer was honesty. As long as you're honest and just come as you are, there is contact. There's the earth element. So even something that appears yogic, it has to do with like your relationship to reality, right?
Yeah, being honest with what is actually happening right now.
That's so hard for people to do, I think. And I think we actually just here, especially now you're initiate. We can talk a little bit about that too. It's like we just learn to be ourselves, but that's so hard for people to do.
Yeah, I guess you first have to recognize that you're not. Like, what does it mean to not be yourself? And then maybe that begins like the actual interest in, okay, like what does that actually mean to come as you are, be yourself?
What does it mean for you to come as you are, be yourself? Like, we talk about radical honesty. What does that feel like? It doesn't always feel good, right? But a lot of people have this assumption that meditation practice is always about feeling good or equanimous. But when you come as you are, that's not a given.
It's helpful to start recognizing where your preferences are. Okay, there's a strong preference to appear a certain way in certain situations, right? Appear smart, intelligent, capable, whatever. So that also means there's a fear of not that. Recognizing your preferences, I think, can then begin to see, okay, yeah, there's these other expressions here also, maybe that those are the ones that are being bypassed or suppressed. And so it takes a little bit of willingness to experiment to try something different, you know? So normally if I would hold in frustration and anger, recognize that that's been the tendency, is to not want to express that because you want to appear, whatever, compassionate and kind and gentle. So then it is just leaning into the opposite, right? It's like, okay, what is it like if I actually let some of this out, right? So whether that be, I know in the last boot camp, I started seeing myself be able to express anger more in my marriage, in the way that I would communicate with my wife, but also my professional practice, even in therapy with clients. It's like, I can actually show frustration, and that's okay, because there was such a strong idea of like being professional, right? Being professional means you don't get upset, you're always accommodating, and your customer's always right. Those kind of things is what was suppressing those certain emotions.
That's almost like the weakling that we were talking about in the beginning of the interview, right? Those are the muscles that weren't getting trained. The capacity to express anger, even in the non-dual state, or even in a state of non-separation, you can actually experience anger, and it's okay, or express it. Yeah, yeah. I remember you sharing about that. You said maybe I just want to scream at some of my clients. Like how did that work out? How did that realization carry over to your workplace? Did you trigger some people? Did you eventually resolve it for the better, or for their own sake? Like, how did that play out?
That particular example, I ended up firing that client. I realized it was not working. This is not working out, this relationship,
Right,
and
right.
I don't need to continue it. It's okay. I have the choice to end this relationship. So that was very freeing, just be able to exercise that option and not have to keep playing this role. It was yeah, it was like these repeated patterns, him not showing up on time, not paying on time, not being respectful of our agreements. It was just like at a certain point I have to decide I can say no to this. I don't need to continue this journey.
I know you also have to contend a lot with the relationship with your wife, right? I think in the cohort six, that was one of the chasms you had to cross. It's like maybe she's thinking you're spending too much time in the boot camp. But now looking back on it, maybe talk a little bit about how, because you said, okay, a client I can just fire. But a wife is a different thing because you also have kids, right? There's like, who's your first love? Is it your marriage, your relationship, or is it CC?
Being willing to sit in the tension, like when you're having a difficult conversation, but the underlying intention is to try to get more honest, right? Really share what my actual desires are, and also be willing to hear the other side, right? Hear my wife. So over the course of the boot camp, I can say there were more uncomfortable conversations, more arguments, more tension. But then what's different is the view. It's like viewing that as, oh no, it's not regression, or it's like actually you're now finally addressing things that have been there the whole time. It's like they're already dormant, latent, and it's the whole honesty thing again, right? Like striving to be radically honest. So even in the people you think you're honest with, it's like there's still preferences in that. You still prefer to be honest in certain ways, but you still hold back, and that takes time to allow that tension, that sort of unresolved sense of there being a tension to be there and not need to rush to some sort of a solution, right? And in the end, I would say, yeah, things did clear up, for the better. Like we were able to finally address things, I think, that we couldn't for many years. And it's a combination of being honest and that patience. And I think it was the ground in which that was able to come forth.
Now that you've seen through all these patterns that you're holding on to, you think you're loving a person, but you're actually loving part of a pattern or part of an idea you have about the person. Most of the time we think that the more we know about another person, the more we know them. So we just keep trying to add more ideas and concepts, how this relationship should be, what this could look like, what the other person is about. But actually the reverse is true, right? It's almost like the less you know about the person, the more intimate you are with them because there's less filter.
Pointing to like the other emptiness, discovering that there's no inherently substantial you, consistent. The same goes for the other, right? So in this case, my wife. So whatever ideas you have of who she is, those two are being let go of. Increasingly, this openness and willingness to engage with, I guess you can call it the mystery, right? It's like it's a mysterious, dynamic, ongoing, unfolding.
I know you're in Jace's cohort, so a lot of the times the main focus is working on relationships, and a lot of times you guys like you will just pin a person down and just put him in the hot seat, and then just go at it.
I'm part of the 7A cohort, which is a smaller, more intimate gathering, and like you were saying, the training there isn't to emphasize the yogic development so much as the actual human relating, and we're encouraged to not always have to show up professionally and be nice to each other. Like actually be willing to call each other out. That's really hard to do because so much of our conditioning is to empathizing with the other person and like, oh, I don't really want to hurt their feelings. The training there continually challenging us, each of us, to be in the hot seat, given the permission to be direct as possible, pointing out patterns that they're seeing or obscurations, sort of emotional blocks, those kind of things. Yeah, I guess that's like a very unusual context. Like how often are we voluntarily choosing to be in that position, right? To receive such feedback and be that vulnerable. And so that's what we've been practicing through the course of this boot camp. And in a way, I've forgotten that that's very strange and unique, right? So I've started to apply that in my life. Like with my wife, I would be just naturally pinning her and pointing things out, and then now learning too, like there's a fitness there too, being able to meet somebody where they're at. So yeah, there was a lot of learning there too, just to be skillful, right? It doesn't mean I need to ignore these things that are coming up, but the delivery matters. The way I'm saying it matters. That's been a real learning. I think that's the edge of my fitness right now.
Yeah, so you're showing more compassion by not always being nice. It's actually a sign of compassion sometimes, right? Because you don't want to just say what the other person wants to hear in order for them to like you or in order for you to appear a certain way. You actually want both parties to grow and see the truth, right? And that doesn't always feel good. That's how noble friends relate.
Being noble friends, like actually having each other's backs, which may mean saying the very things that we don't want to hear. It is because you care, which is why you have to actually say those things.
Michael Jordan will be the other, will be an extreme. I don't know if that's a good example, but he's known to be like very brutal to his teammates, but actually made them grow, made the one championship. But I think it's a little bit too extreme, right? He was just being an asshole. So there's like a yogic maneuver that there's a flexibility in which, like, in the way in which you approach these things. But so. Talk a little bit about, now we get into the conversation of like friendship and noble beings relating. You just got initiated like, I guess like 3 days ago you said, and also how does that parallel with your training in terms of like becoming a mentor? Because I know now right now you are training to become a mentor, and I could see actually just by going through the 7-8 experiments with Jace, like I can see you showing up differently, how you are able to very skillfully actually, and more than I am, like, pointing out to people where they're not seeing their views, but doing it in a way where it's almost like funny, or you're mentioning to this one particular acolyte about how like maybe he's coming in with too much like warm up, try to get into a particular state, and then use an analogy of like, oh, you're riding a submarine, bro, like let's all swim naked, just things like that, like that never seen that from you before. Like, so talk about being initiated, what it means to you, and become a mentor. Is that I knew for the first time that I saw your self-interview, not just the fact that you'd be a good fit here, I actually had an idea you actually would make a really good mentor.
So the initiation thing, that to me is like, it's just declaring the path of devotion, to myself, to the group, to our head trainer. That's a big part of it, is just beginning to see that this is about completion and getting very real about it. There's you're not just here to have a good time. Yes, that. And for me, it's about Buddhahood. It's about completion. What does that even mean, right? And doing it with a group of talented, amazing beings, so being part of a group, I think that's the Sangha, right? I shared this with a group. To me, the day I was initiated, it felt like I got drafted to an NBA team, like there's a real feeling like, holy crap, like I'm joining a really amazing group of people. But it's also like just the beginning of your journey, it's like you're the rookie, you just got drafted.
You just got drafted, bro.
You're in training camp now, like
Sometimes we use the analogy of being Olympic athletes. Like we're all Olympic athletes in training, but now you have to actually go win, be the victorious one, be like the Nike Swisher, right? Yeah.
You've been drafted, but this is where the real work begins, right? It's like there's a clear objective, and we're holding each other accountable. It's like everyone, it is dependent on each other actually doing the work to get there, right? So as much of it is like a individual journey, it's equally true that it's a team sport as well, where the relating comes in. Can't do it alone.
That's something that I had to like work through myself, how like there was a mindset of like solo realization, how like realization is just, you just do your own thing. Did you ever have a tendency to be one of those, just cocoon yourself in your own realization? Now you have to kind of cross a chasm into this other territory. Was that difficult for you, or was that very natural for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, I don't know, most of my adult life, I would say I had a predisposition to be a lone wolf, kind of do my own thing. Work with groups to a point, but then also seeing this pattern of like, oh, I pull away and, kind of go off and do my own thing, part of that being fiercely independent, contrarian. And then there came a point last boot camp realizing that whole pattern got me to a certain point, was like a strength, or it served, but that very thing is now the block.
Yeah, that's why we learn here too. It's like your talent becomes your obstacle.
To flip it basically meant acknowledging that you cannot do it alone, right? You can do it alone to a certain point, but now you really do require a group of committed, noble beings to relate in such a way, or true friends to actually go beyond that, right? Because you're always going to hit the same limitation.
Yeah, the basketball analogy is really good because sometimes we talk about how tapping into other people's capacities or talents. Say sometimes if, for example, you're very good yogically. So if I want to like do some kind of a yogic maneuver, say like lucid dreaming, I can just tap into you because we're kind of being initiated means like we're connected into I guess you could say a Vajra net, or less technically, we're like our mind streams now becomes not just one but the many at the same time. It's like it's inseparable, but you still get to do your own thing. But there's a sense of like, oh, this is a hive mind now, right? And then everything that is going on with your life, even private stuff that you don't share, that karma gets entangled with the rest of the group. And there's a certain sense of, I guess, pressure in it, right?
Yeah, it worked both ways. Yeah, like to have that type of connectivity, like you're saying, like you can benefit from each other's strengths and talents, but then also you're picking up on other people's baggage more. Like anything that's unresolved or disowned is going to show up more within your awareness. That's maybe leads into your question around mentorship. I actually cannot distinguish anymore an acolyte in the boot camps bringing something up, not addressing something. It's going to be felt. There's going to be some recognition here to use that as information to point things out, to say, hey, have you considered this? Just a basic example is, maybe someone's not really allowing them to feel angry. I might actually just physically be sitting with so much anger for no apparent reason, and then realizing, oh, okay, like this is information that can help this individual. It's like, hey, can you lean into frustration and anger because you're so in tuned, basically holding all this karma, right? This collective karma. So that becomes, I guess, it's a skill, to be sensitive to that, and then using that information to help guide others.
What does it feel to like? Is it to be initiated now? Like, in terms of like, do you wake up in the morning with a sense of like, because I'm just curious, like personally, like since this is so fresh for you, there must be some fear, right? Some excitement, some fear. Like, what if it's fear? What are you afraid of? To be honest, I don't know how is it for you. When I got initiated, I had no choice. So like, you actually took time and you considered it. And you actually said, "Oh, this is actually the perfect timing," because you said, "Like, I listened to the one-on-one, one-on-two with Min Chen and you and Ryan. You said if this happened like 2 months ago, you probably would still maybe be on the fence about it. What kind of adjustment do you have to make in your life? Because I know it's all about tweaking your life to be about the path, especially after initiation. There's like no way you can like not do that.
The fear, I think, is just because what I'm signing up for is for this to continue to accelerate, right? This process.
Yeah, it's gonna accelerate karma way faster.
Yeah, so with acceleration, there could be more turbulence, more potential fighting, relationally, more pain. So that's what the fear would be about. It's just like, oh, okay, like that's, there's just a natural like, do you really want to do this? Like you're willingly, choosing to receive and maybe experience more challenge. But the pacing does feel like it's been appropriate, just like the timing of everything. If it was 2 months ago, I don't think I would have been ready. So there is like the fitness is catching up to a point where there's also increasingly more faith. You just have more faith in what's happening. Even the momentary doubts or fears aren't really, they're not really getting in the way. So in a sense, like the initiation has felt quite smooth. I think the team did a good job, probably just pacing out whatever, the trajectory and being in the 7-8 group, I think all led to this transition feeling pretty seamless, honestly.
Yeah, we didn't mention this, but part of the objective of 7A is to train people who are not yet initiatives to become initiatives. And becoming initiative is all about like having like relational fitness. So they go hand in hand. What people expect out of you, Adrian, when people are watching this in Korea? People maybe they'll sign up because they like you. Now we put this out there. Maybe, I hate this Adrian guys. I want to learn from this guy.
What's next it's the path of mentorship. Continue being part of this ride with the group, with CC, organization, the team. Um, yeah, there's an excitement. There's an excitement because it feels early, right? It's like you're part of a startup. Like there's a lot of like potential here, but also
Hmm.
who knows where this is going to go, right? There's a little bit of that sense of adventure,